Makeup assignment. This here is to help you with the assignment we've been working on for the past few days. We start out with sample unit 3 assessment. Then we have practice 7.13. It's a 2-page, front and back. Well, it's one sheet of paper, front and back. And then we finish up with the Cornell notes of tips, markup, discounts, and etc. All right, let's get into it. So, 61. So we're starting out with the sample unit 3 assessment. So in the first game, Tom scored 28 points. In the second game, he scored 35 points. What was his percent of increase from the first game to the second? So we have a few pieces of information we have to identify. We need to know what the amount was, the first amount, and then what was the later amount. And so, of course, the first comes before the second. So the first amount was 28 points, and the second will be 35. So we find the difference between those two, and then we divide by the original amount, and that will produce a decimal. We multiply that decimal times 100, and that'll give us our percent increase. Okay, so the way I like to do these is side by side. So let's take a look at that. All right. So I'm going to give later on the way I show how to work these problems is I give an example problem with an example amount. It's not the amounts that are stated in the question, but it's a pattern you could use to follow. So, for example, our original amount was $100 and our new amount was $125. So let's say 10 years ago I put $100 in savings and I took it out this year and it would be worth about $125. All right, well, what was my percent increase in saving that money? So all I do is I just use the percent increase formula. It's my pattern to go by. So let me work that out. So the new is $125. My original was $100. I'm going to divide by my original amount. So what that's going to be, it's going to be a difference of 25 over 100. That decimal equivalent is 0.25. Now I'm going to take that decimal, multiply by 100, and that tells me I had a percent increase of 25%. So let's take a look at the game. So I have to identify my new and my original amounts. Well, my original was what came first. So I have 28 and then 35. So I take 35 because that's my new amount, and I subtract the 28, and this is over 28. So what I end up with is 7 over 28. That equals 0.25. I'm going to multiply that times 100, and that equals 25%. So as it worked out, my example and my actual solutions were both 25%, but it's not necessarily that way. Okay, so the important thing to remember is do not take my work from this video and put that in as your answers, because to receive credit, not only does a question have to be correct, but you have to show your work. And if I see my work, you're going to have an incorrect answer anyway. So, all right, let's move forward. I'll pick up the pace here a little bit. So, here we have an item. I have an example. So my item cost is $37.99, sales tax at 10%. So my total cost is item cost plus sales tax. So I can plug this in. And if I take $37.99 and I multiply by 10%, we have to rewrite that. We cannot calculate with a percent. We need to calculate with a decimal. So this would work out to be $3.79 and 9 thousandths of a dollar. Well, we don't have partial pennies, so we are going to look here, and we are going to round to the nearest cent. Okay, so that's what we have here with 3.799. So the 9, where the arrow is, that is where we are rounding. So we look at the next, and we see that it is 5 or larger. So this turns into $3.80 worth of tax. So this is going to give us $41.79. Well, maybe I don't want that to get confused. So I'm going to rewrite this problem. All right. So 9 plus 8, 17, carry the 1, 8, 11, carry the 1, $41.79, just like before. Okay, now I want you to see something. When I added with decimals, I had to line up the decimal point. If you notice, I can make a straight line straight on down through there. Whereas over here, when we multiply with a decimal, we do not have to line the decimal point up. It's only on addition and subtraction that we have to line the decimal point up. Next one, 63. We're going to use the percent increase formula, right? Increased from 750. That tells us 750 was the original amount. So 900 had to be the new amount. Barton Building Supplies, so 44 tons of gravel on Saturday, and this is 55% of the gravel. So how many tons of gravel did Barton Building Supplies start with Saturday morning? Okay, so here's an example. So let's say, for example, 30 tons were sold, and that works out to be 40% of the supply on hand. Well, we don't know what 100% is, but if we had, if we knew the weight of 1%, we could just multiply that times 100, and then that will give us 100%. That will give us the total amount of gravel that was on hand, or whatever the item is. So what you do is you take what was sold and divide it by the number of percents, and we set this 30 divided by 40, and that's going to produce a decimal. Okay, now when you work this problem out using the 44 tons and the 55%, looking for the value of 1%, you're going to get a different amount. But now that we have what 1% weighs, if we times that by 100, this is going to equal what 100% weighs. So as it turns out, 0.75 times 100 is 75, and we are talking about tons. $65. We have salary and commission. Well, they tell you what her salary is, and then they tell you the commission rate and how much was sold. You get 3 pieces of information. If we want to find out the total amount Stacy earned, for example, I have one set up here. Well, we have, the way you find this is the commission that equals dollar amount of the sales times the rate in decimal form. You can't calculate it with a percent, but you can convert the percent. I've shown how to do that already. So what we have in this example is 5. And if the salary were, let's say, 300 and the commission were 75, you add those together, that would give you $375 that Stacy or whoever would earn that week. Okay, here we have a dinner. Costs $4.99. 15% tip. How much is the tip? Well, you take the dinner cost. All right. Let's say the dinner cost was, let's say, $12.99, and then we're going to tip, we'll say 10%. So, well, we can't multiply with a percent, so convert that to a decimal. So, I want to write this a little more neatly. There we go. So, what this works out to be is $1.299. So, we need to round at the cent. So, this turns out to be $1.30. Mia bought a new coat and 3 skirts. In my example, I changed the prices. So that way, you'd have to calculate. All right. Now what we need to do is figure out what 3 skirts at $12.79 each would cost. So 3 times $12.79 . 3 times 9 is 27. 3 times 7 is 21 plus 2 makes 23. Carry that 2. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 is 8. 3 times 1 is 3. We have 2 decimal points. So, as it turns out, $38.37 is the skirts. But now we have to have the cost of the coats, and that would give us $63.37 for the cost of the items. Now, we have sales tax. So, we take 63.37 times the sales tax rate, and that was, let's say the sales tax rate is 10%, but we gotta convert that to a decimal. Showed how to do that earlier, so go back a few slides if you need to. So this would be 6.337, but we round at the penny, so this turns out to be 6.34. The reason why is we're rounding at the penny. Right here. We're rounding at the penny. So we look at the next number and see if it's 5 or larger, from 5 to 9. If it is, then the penny increases. If not, penny stays the same, we drop the rest. Okay. So there we go. So $6.34. Okay, so that's the cost. Tax. $69.71 is the answer. Okay. Next one, 68. Mrs. Z wants to buy a new cell phone. She's researched and found the following 4 offers. Okay, I don't have example numbers for this, but here's how you approach this. There's 3 things you need to do in this order. Calculate the discounts. So you have to calculate the discounts for each of these. Okay? Then once you have the discount for each of these, the dollar value discount, then you subtract the discount from the original price for each company. So AT&T, you calculate the discount, and then you subtract that from the original price, and then that would be what the price was after the discount. And so then you look at your 4 prices that you calculated, and you choose the lowest price. All right. 69. Here's a family budget. So this is set up in percentages. Now, the 2 largest categories would be household and housing. So I'm going to use an example. Now, I'm going to say household plus housing. We can use the percents in this calculation because we're adding. If you're only adding or subtracting and everything is a percent, you can do that. So this is going to give us the percent of both. The sum. Then you take the 7,000, whatever the monthly income is, times the sum in decimal form. And that's going to give you the cost. 70. A firefighter has an annual income. Firefighter has to pay tax like the rest of us. They tell us what the tax rate is. So we want to know how much in dollars and cents. So that means we're going to round at the cents that the firefighter has to pay. So the income tax equals whatever the income is multiplied by the income tax rate. And that will give you the dollar value of the income tax. Now, if you end up with more than 2 digits in your decimal, so if you end up with number, you're going to round. Let's see, I want to put a 0 there. You're going to round at the cents. Okay? So I've explained how to round earlier. Okay, so 107, Kevin's investing $7,000 for 2 years in an account that earns 9% simple interest per year. Okay, this whole thing per year, this tells you how long your period is, and we see that you have 2 periods. Now this is simple. This is simple interest. That means the first year it's going to earn interest on the principal, and the second year it's going to earn interest on the principal. But it will not earn interest on the previous year's interest. Most of the time we deal with compound interest, but sometimes we deal with simple. So the principal, in this case it's $7,000 times the interest rate, and that's the interest earned per period. And you're going to multiply that times the number of periods. So that will equal this will tell you how much interest is earned. So calculate the interest earned, add earned interest to the principal. The value equals the principal plus the interest, the total amount of the interest. Okay, so 7,000 times 9% is going to produce about $630 in the first year, and in the second year, the same thing, another $630. So you'd add the you'd multiply the 630 times 2. That would tell you the amount of interest that would be earned for the whole life of this investment. You take that interest, you add it back to the 7,000, and that will tell you the value of your investment by adding the principal and the interest. So, here's a multi-step example of a budget. If we want to know the minimum household budget, we add the expenses. And that will tell us the minimum household budget. As it turns out, that is the minimum household budget. Now, if you need to find out how much the average hourly wage needs to be, you take the minimum budget divide that by the number of hours to be worked, and this will tell you the average hourly wage that it will take to be able to cover that budget. Okay, and so we have an explanation right there. Sales tax, it's the total of the item cost times the sales tax rate. Make sure it's a decimal. And this is the dollar value of the sales tax. If you need total cost, you would add the total item cost to the sales tax. Tips. Cost of meal times the percent tip will give you the dollar value of the tip. It's kind of like sales tax. markups. The amount the store pays times the percent of the markup that the store is going to add to what they pay. So we want to determine the percent markup in decimal form, and that will give us the dollar value of the markup. Discount. Take the original price times the percent of the discount equals the dollar value of the discount. If you want to know the new price after the discount, you take the price minus the discount, and that'll give you the new price. Simple interest, again, just a simple multiplication problem, but you do have to make sure that the rate is expressed as a decimal. So, principal times the interest rate in decimal form equals the dollar value of simple interest. All right, now if you're looking for the value of an investment, then you have to take the simple interest and add in the principal. And that'll give you the value of the investment. All right, good luck. We'll see you in class.